session. Call to order. If you guys want to move up, Sean, Lucas, Jeff, Herman, if you want to move up into the chairs, you can. Or you can stay there, whatever you think.
Thank you.
Public comment on study session items. Do we have any public? So we will start with Andrew Stecker.
All right, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Give a brief overview of what this joint meeting really is. The City of Manistee is participating in the Redevelopment Ready Community Certification through the state of Michigan. Through that program, we are kind of called to create a space in which public bodies can come together and collaborate and be transparent and give project updates. And so in past years, the city has kind of fulfilled this requirement within a city council meeting. However, we've been asked to make it a more robust meeting that's a little more intentional. And so this is kind of the first go around to make it a separate standalone meeting or study session. And the point of this is to really give the boards and commission a space to discuss projects, to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction, and to make sure that the city really has a unified vision that everybody's in the loop on. And so in the years going forward, take note kind of what the layout is today, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, ways it can be improved, because we're asked to keep this meeting on a regular basis year over year. And so as we go through tonight, just keep notes as to how this could be improved or made better, and make sure that it's worth your while in years to come. And so I just want to put that out there. We have a full agenda tonight, so we're going to try to move quick. I will cover the RRC priority sites as well as the DDA portion of this meeting, which we will review our streetscape. It'll go over to Chief Herndon to discuss fire districts, and then finish with Maddie, the new planning administrator for the city, to discuss a number of items. So again, we got a full agenda, so I'm going to hop right into it. Thank you everybody for participating in the RRC priority sites. I know it wasn't the easiest thing to navigate that survey, but thank you all for your input. We had 18 responses, with many coming from the Historic District Commission, so I really appreciate the input from the Historic District Commission as well as Council. And so to start, just a little background into RRC and what that is for our community. I'm going to give a brief presentation about what it is, our history with it, the benefits, and then go right into our priority sites that were selected for this coming year, and then we'll give a brief opportunity for questions on the program. But the RRC program is a state technical assistance program that's meant to encourage kind of growth, transparency, in collaborations with cities across the state of Michigan. And this is really done by the state of Michigan outlining best practices and the city executing those best practices and implementing them within our processes and our structures here in the city. And this opens up multiple doors and resources for us if you become a certified community. And so there's 83 certified communities throughout the state of Michigan. We were one of the first 10 communities to become certified back in 2017. And so we've gone through 2 renewals or recertifications, one in 2021, and the last one at the beginning of this year. We were recertified for another 3 years in the program. And the benefits of partaking in RRC is threefold. There is an inherent benefit of actually implementing these best practices that the state outlines. These aren't just arbitrary best practices the state lists. They are best practices that are pulled from planning consultants in communities that have found great success all over the country, and then synthesized into a task list. And so there's that inherent good in just executing best practices. The second is technical assistance. By being certified, we get access to state employees that will help us in our redevelopment efforts, in our planning efforts, in helping streamline some of these city processes. And so it's helping build our capacity. And then finally, funding. We get direct buckets of money for being certified, and it also helps us be more competitive on grant applications that are available through this state. And so now I'm just going to jump right into our RRC priority sites. And so I know this is highly anticipated, drum roll, if you will. Not actually, but So the 5 priority sites that were selected through our survey, number 1 was the Gateway project. Number 2 is the Ware Hardware property on Division Street. Number 3 is Ironworks. Number 4 is the old Olson property. Many of you know it as the old Olson grocery store or Save-A-Lot. And then 5 is the Waterworks property. And through these priority sites, we are signaling to the state that these are high impact, high visibility sites that the community would like to see redeveloped. It helps these sites get state grants and kind of signals to developers from all over the state that these are the top sites in our community that we really, really want to see movement on. And so, are there any questions with RRC? Again, moving quickly here, trying to get through our longer agenda and make sure we're respectful of your time. Yep.
Was there any discussion about the Catholic Central property? Because just recently it's gone on the market, or is going to be on the market very, very soon.
Yep.
And that's the largest parcel we have in Manistee.
Yep, great question, Mick. That wasn't on the survey itself. I saw a couple individuals put that in other section. The way we came up with the list for that survey is taking the 5 priority sites from last year and then general consensus with city council members and Bill Gamble to kind of come up with those other 5. But I think that's one that we could certainly reevaluate, and it is a priority for the economic development efforts of the city.
And talking with Andrew, I think that other category was very vital because new things do come up like that Catholic Central site. So I was encouraging people to provide something in that category so that could be considered maybe next year. So thank you.
Any other questions regarding RRC? Otherwise, we can move on to the DDA portion of the meeting, which is kind of showcasing the highly anticipated streetscape project that we've been working on. Again, this is a presentation that's really meant to kind of outline our efforts over the last year and a half since the Fleece and Vanderbrink streetscape study that provided a lot of public input. This is going to be a presentation where you might see you're going to see some renderings that are really conceptual renderings that were created to assist us come up with budget pricing and project feasibility. We've needed renderings to give to engineering firms so they can go forth and actually give us accurate cost estimates. And so you may see some items in here, nothing's necessarily concrete. We really want to hear some feedback, but definitely just save that feedback and let me know, either after the meeting or after the presentation's over. But again, if you see a certain color of paver or, a guy wearing sunglasses, that's not, the final version of our plan, right? And so there is flexibility. We're still doing community outreach to, see what kind of feedback we can garner for the project. But just to get right into it, the presentation itself, we're going to go over what the community kind of articulated in our F&V study, what the Streetscape Committee's goals were, and then finally sharing projects that are happening in the district and our actual design, conceptual design that we are looking to implement for the streetscape project, primarily along River Street. So out of the F&V study that took place in 2023 and finished as a hard document at the beginning of 2024, there were 6 main priorities that were identified. That was connectivity, connecting River Street to the Riverwalk through up-to-date wayfinding and better connectivity pathways, creating a better environment that invited people to stay downtown, creating bigger public gathering spaces in our downtown corridor, creating more green space in our corridor, as well as creating pedestrian safety, allowing more accessibility in our downtown corridor, allowing all modes of transportation and making sure everything was ADA accessible, creating smart growth that was respecting the historical characteristics of our downtown, and then finally just overall public infrastructure improvements. This was boiled down further through a DDA survey that was given to our board, and 4 main topics that really came out of that and bubbled to the surface were safety in 2 fronts, the pedestrian safety as well as vehicle traffic flow safety, accessibility, and public space enhancements. And so these were the 4 buckets that the Streetscape Committee began our streetscape journey on and through. And just to go back real quick, the F&V study was where we had our public input, but the result of that study was really a laundry list of items that weren't scalable or feasible for this community. And so they gave us a lot of great ideas and a springboard to move forward and kind of select some of those items and see what was really a scalable, sustainable design for Manistee to maintain and realistically fund. And so the Streetscape came up with 5 primary goals. We wanted a scalable, sustainable solution that would address public infrastructure enhancement as well as downtown safety concerns. But we also recognized that we need a unified vision that the public supports and multiple boards support. And that kind of led us to realizing that any solution that we picked, the financial feasibility of it, needed to be phased out. It wasn't going to happen in just a one-shot go all at once. And then we also realized we needed a design that multiple parties could get behind so we could diversify our funding sources because of how expensive public infrastructure work can be. And then kind of most importantly for us in the DDA is making sure we're respecting our businesses downtown and coming up with a plan that's as least disruptive to them as possible because of the construction fatigue through the bridge project and the US 31 project that's coming down the pipeline. And so with these 5 kind of elements and goals leading our thought process, that's where our heads were at coming into creating a unified design that was sustainable and financially feasible for the DDA to execute. With that in mind, we looked at the other projects that were taking place in our downtown district because we knew that whatever design we wanted had to be scalable across multiple sections of the DDA, including those side streets that break off from River Street. And so, just a quick overview of the projects that are taking place. We divided that into 6 different sections. The 2 Riverwalk, so north and south projects, the RAP grant project for all of River Street west of Maple, the East Corridor, which is east of Maple on River Street between Maple and Division, and then the Gateway project, as well as in East Plaza, which is the DDA-owned parking lot next to Dick's Barber Shop. And so these projects are at varying stages. Obviously, the South Riverwalk project is complete, and the North Riverwalk project is expected next year. The RAP project's also underway with construction projected for this spring and funding already secured. The conceptual renderings that you're going to see in the following slides are really that River Street East Corridor. However, those renderings and those concepts are stretched and executed in the RAP grant. And so we had separate renderings and engineering done for the RAP grant through the Spicer Group, but those same design elements that you see on the East Corridor are hopefully implemented in the RAP grant that's going to be executed next spring. And so that was really a kickoff for us for the Streetscape project. But I want to just re-articulate and make it very, very clear that these are conceptual renderings used for budget feasibility and project feasibility. And so there may be some elements, again, raised boxes that might not look exactly like the final product, or paver design that might not look exactly like the final product, because those are still being determined on a budgetary consideration basis. And so moving right into it, to make the project scalable and feasible, we really wanted to focus on our intersections because that's where a lot of the safety concerns came in, especially from a pedestrian standpoint. And so each intersection is unique in the challenges that it has, but the Streetscape Committee walked pretty much the entire length of River Street, took our design intersection by intersection to be really intentional about what needed to be included, how it needed to be shaped in order to allow vehicle traffic to run smoothly while also protecting pedestrians. And so we're going to start on the east end of River Street at the Division Street intersection. One of the goals was to simplify materiality in the streetscape design, and so eliminate all the concrete paver variation we see now that has led to variations in settling and a lot of the trip hazards that pedestrians see along River Street. And so in this rendering specifically, we bump out our corners, allow pedestrians to get farther out on the street. This allows them to have a smaller crossing point. It makes vehicle traffic slow down because visually they're a little pinched. And those are going to be poured concrete with pavers running the remainder between our intersections. As you can see, there's bollards there, and we're trying to leverage our existing lamp posts and some of our existing infrastructure. These bump outs that you see are going to taper into what feels like a curbless design, but that's not going to be true for the entirety of River Street. It's not going to be entirely curbless, it'll just be at that intersection points where our bump outs take place. And so moving to our mid-block stop, this really came about from the F&V study in the clear articulation that people wanted more connectivity. The problem with the Fleece and Vanderbrink study was they leveraged private property and a scale that wasn't realistic for the community. This is a portion that fulfills that connectivity where we can connect River Street with the Riverwalk on DDA-owned property that has a design that's leveraging, I guess, existing building scape, so having, you know, minimal financial impact, and it's not going to be, let's say, an elevator or something that isn't really, it doesn't really fit our community character. This is much more better suited to creating that public space, gathering space downtown that was highlighted in F&V. We're not saying that the pirate ship is going to be a done deal. You know, again, that's one of those elements that realistically, that's a further design discussion, but this is also a mid-block stop. Division between Greenbush, that's the longest stretch of River Street, and that needs to get broken up to continue to slow traffic and prioritize pedestrian safety. Moving on to Greenbush, it's kind of more the same. The curbless bump outs, bollards, we're leveraging our existing lamp posts, adding additional seating, and trying to integrate raised beds that are providing greenery in the downtown while also creating hardscaped barriers to encourage pedestrian safety and allowing pedestrians to feel safer as cars are going by. And this was a way that we felt was a kind of low maintenance, high sustainability solution to incorporating greenery into downtown. Finally, Poplar, as you can see, bump outs at all the corners of that intersection, and this is a kind of high value intersection here because the Vogue is right there, and as we know, the Vogue can really back up onto the sidewalk, allowing that to have more gathering space right outside those doors. But as you can see, it's the poured concrete with bollards for pedestrian protection, integrating raised beds, and then having all pavers for the remainder of the run between our intersections. Again, trying to eliminate the variation in materiality. And then finally, this is the Maple Street intersection. Given turning radiuses, this will still have that curbless feel around the curb themselves, but no bump outs here, just given turning radiuses and allowing trucks to still make that left or right hand turn onto Maple and Washington Street there. And so quickly, just a quick highlight of some of the design elements that were discussed and pointed out within all those renderings. Bollards at intersections, poured bump outs, raised beds. Something to take note of is even though we had that budget figure earlier in this project status slide that said $1.7 to $3.8 million in project scale, that comes down to what materials are selected. And at the end of the day, even at the high end of that, we are not trying to, or we're not going to get a completely brand new streetscape. We still need to leverage existing assets that we have, such as the curb, that are in between our intersections that are in perfectly good condition to make this project feasible. And so just some primary takeaways from today in this brief presentation is bump outs are really the solution that we found that would enhance pedestrian safety, that's actually scalable, that we can take intersection by intersection and that have very, very high impact to allow for more pedestrian gathering spaces in downtown while slowing traffic and creating some pedestrian safety in downtown, like I said. Second, mill and fill. We're looking to mill and fill River Street. The city's already committed to that. And that removes some of those crosswalks that are currently pavers with cement ribbons on either side of them. We are going to remove that due to the difficulty of maintenance on those crosswalks and how they've held up due to vehicle traffic. Third, addressing the kind of safety concerns from a pedestrian standpoint that come about from the concrete paver in the variation in settling. That's going to be addressed by pretty much converting that all to paver or all to concrete. Again, that in large part is determined by our budget and finding other financing sources for the project. Fourth is a unified wayfinding, seating, and planner design that allows a continuity throughout the entire corridor and promotes connectivity between the streetscape and the Riverwalk. And then finally, that East Plaza was really our attempt to create a space that would be low maintenance and sustainable, but also give kind of public space or park space, if you will, in downtown that would give another reason for people to loiter in downtown and allow people to stay in downtown, which was a big priority for the F&B study, for the DDA board. And so that's really a high-level overview of our streetscape design. I hope you guys took something away from this. Any feedback is welcomed. Are there any questions right now?
Mick?
I've got one. The raised planters, are they going to be designed so that they can be removed during the winter time so that the streets can be plowed appropriately? Same with the ballards?
So that was a discussion that's been had. I don't believe there's been a final determination. I think right now, since we've looped Jeff in, I think there is some desire to make it removable and not permanent for that reason. Lucas, is that correct? That's kind of been the narrative that we've had, making them kind of maneuver, at least the planners being able to reposition those. The bollards are still a question of safety in whether or not they're traffic grade. Those might not be on those bump outs removable, but that's still under consideration from an engineering standpoint and whether that meets traffic safety standards.
Yeah, as of right now, the planters haven't really been kind of decided on, but the bollards are going to be spaced appropriately on the bump outs to where it'll make maintenance a little bit easier, but they'll also be lighted. So they won't be removable on the bump outs, but down by the fountain area, the plan is to make those all solar lighted and removable, so that way that space can be converted.
Then the other question is, right now, the parking that you're looking at creating open space is one of our primary handicap parking spaces, because it's one of the very few places that have easy access. Are we looking at possibly finding some property on Washington Street to compensate for that? Because there's no hills between there and downtown. Everything to the south, you have the challenge of pretty steep.
Yeah, and we've discussed that at the streetscape committee level, and we haven't discussed purchasing new property. It's more about making sure we have ample handicap space identified along River Street, because from the elimination of parking spaces, that's very, very minimal with those bump outs. It's far less than people would think. We have ample parking throughout the district, but obviously the handicap parking is critical, and so making sure that's properly marked. And that was kind of one of those solutions that was identified, as making sure that we just have more marked handicap spots along River Street. Yep.
I like the stable planter idea, because I think, God forbid, we've seen some pretty wild things going down sidewalks, and people getting hit. And I think a concrete planter that's stable every so often would stop some of that fear. I kind of like the stable planter idea myself. Food for thought.
Okay, noted. Mark, you had a question?
I like the park, replacing the parking lot by Dick's Barber Shop. Will you be giving any thought to adding trees in that area to soften that? or trees downtown in the planters.
So the tree discussion hasn't been had for that East Plaza. That hasn't been fully designed. Once we hit a point where that becomes a priority, because currently, given our funding, our priority is get the bump outs, get everything from building to building. That plaza is something that is definitely something that's really exciting for the community, but we're really, really wanting to prioritize the pedestrian safety and vehicle traffic flow at the immediate. But once we get to that point, I think there may be potential for having some sort of trees within that plaza. I don't want to say anything with confidence. That's something that would be a design consideration though. Within the planters themselves, there has been some back and forth as to what might go in there, but that's yet to be determined as to the exact, what plant should go in there. Is it a tree? One of the big discussions was having trees along River Street, but at the end of the day, it was determined from a maintenance standpoint, it wasn't going to be really feasible unless you had enough resources to really throw at it, and we felt like that wasn't going to be the most sustainable design to put trees, and also not necessarily the most true to the historic elements of River Street. So those were some of the considerations that we had.
Okay.
Yes, that kind of is my question. I love the idea of planters, but how are we going to maintain them? I mean, between the river walk and so on, I know it's going to be extra work.
Yep. And so that goes back to, trees or, dune grass. You pick a very, very low maintenance of vegetation that isn't going to need a DPW staff member to water it every morning, for example. So that all just comes down to what do you put in there? And that's something we've talked about, and we'll definitely be leaning more towards a very low maintenance plant, and that will come about. We'll finalize that, with Jeff McCullough to make sure that it's truly something the DPW feels comfortable with.
And when you think about it, we have planters now, but you can't see them because cars are next to them.
And honestly, I don't know who maintains those.
The DDA
The
budgets
DDA.
that, and they work with a couple different nurseries. I know Lizzie's being one of them. And they're switched out this year. They do a beautiful job in the spring. That last week, 4th of July into August, and then late August, they came in with like the cabbage plants. They're absolutely beautiful in the fall. So the DDA does budget for that, and the people that we've partnered with in the past few years have done a beautiful job, as well as the DPW watering them, putting down watering the hay plants and so it is an existing.
Yep.
You just don't see them if you're driving by because the cars are parallel parked right next to them.
You do see them, they look very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm wondering if there's consideration for trash removal bins and the possibility of having a recycling option along with that, be able to reinforce our waterfront community and that we have to protect it.
That's certainly something that we can look into. There hasn't been any discussion yet, but I appreciate the feedback. And so,
Are you sure? Because the pictures are all done, right?
yeah.
And that is still.
No, that's okay. And so just in the essence of time, we're gonna kind of move on. The last item from I guess DDA standpoint, I had a conversation with Bill in the last couple of weeks and just kind of started to chew on the idea of having a vacancy ordinance implemented for commercial spaces in the city. This is kind of in its infancy. There are other communities throughout northern Michigan who have established vacancy ordinances that require people who hold vacant property to register. It's very hard for a municipality to go after a property owner super aggressively, but it's something that would at least start to kind of identify what vacancies we have, what property owners have been kind of just sitting on their properties for the last decade or two, and how can we better support them, if they need support getting movement on their property. And so that's something that is in the early infancies, and just wanted to kind of put that in everybody's ear. It's something that, in talking with a couple city officials, as well as downtown businesses, people seem kind of in support of, that they would like to see the city take a more proactive role towards, identifying some of the blighted vacant buildings that kind of plague some of the commercial districts in the community. And so just throwing that out there, I guess, are there any questions regarding that?
I just have one. Has the Petoskey, the one that you added, gave it to us, has that been implemented?
Yeah.
And if so, what has been the general feedback?
So that was very, very early stages of it. Yes, it's implemented, but it's in its kind of infancy, so it hasn't had a long enough life to determine whether it's had a lot of success. And talking with the DDA director up there, who was a big advocate for it, the biggest gripe they got was one legacy property owner who's had multiple different downtown buildings in downtown Petoskey that have sat vacant for the last 20 years. And so that individual came out and enforced, but otherwise the community said, well, we all don't like these properties either. Yeah, we're on board with getting our vacancies on a rolling program where they need to be kind of paying into the program. Are there any other topics on that? Otherwise, we'll move on to Chief Herndon's fire district discussion. And Chief, I can pass it on.
Sure. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Herndon. I'm your fire chief. We haven't had a chance to meet yet. Started working for the city of Manistee back in 2023. So I'm here today to talk to you about there's a learning curve. I think you got her. All right. Here to talk to you about Manistee and a proposed fire district. This fire district concept has been something that I've been mulling over and basically developing after the first month or two that I started working here. Really been discussing this opportunity and this concept with Bill and some other people in that. And as we've been gaining traction with it, and that just, this is going to give you an overall view of where we're at today with it. So currently right now, your Manistee Fire Department, we are a full-time fire department. I'm talking about the city fire department. We're staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what we do is we respond to fire calls, rescue calls such as PI accidents, ice and water related things, wires down and those types of things, and medical calls. Our fire department does medical calls. We provide ALS, Advanced Life Support Ambulance Services. That really represents about 80% of our call volume. And that EMS is a big deal in the fire service world because as nationally as fires, the amount of fires has decreased, we supplement that with EMS. We provide EMS services in that. And that's what gives you the best bang for your buck out of your fire department. And that EMS calls, they said they do 80%. We have fire stations that are strategically placed throughout communities, and that's what makes us optimal places to provide ambulance service. But back to our fire department is we have a total of 9 personnel, that's including myself. I have 2 shifts of 3 people on per day, and I have 1 shift with 2 people on per day. We are the only full-time fire department in the county of Manistee, all right? So, but with that, we have only 3 firefighters on duty per day. That's enough to staff an ambulance and handle lower acuity calls in that. But what it's not enough to do, it's not enough to put out fires. And that when there's a fire and a fire occurs, we try to get about 14 firefighters that are trained and ready to go on scene in under 10 minutes. Those are national standards, and those are things that we try to accomplish. We accomplish that with automatic aid agreements. So Manistee Township and Filer Township, we have automatic aid agreements. Whenever there's a fire in either of our communities, we automatically all respond to it, all right? So what's happening is, though, the Manistee Township Fire Department and Filer Township Fire Department are volunteer-based fire departments. Volunteer fire departments, they operate by when there's a fire or an emergency call, they send out a page, or it's all done on apps on phones now, and whoever's available responds from wherever they're at to their fire station and then to the emergency scene. All right? So what I've noticed and what we've researched is this volunteer fire departments are struggling to recruit and retain personnel. All right, and then that affects us because as they struggle to have people, we get less people on our end too. So the reasons why they're struggling is because over the past 30 years, there's been a 37% increase in call volume. All right, so as volunteer departments and like our fire department becomes busier and busier, it's hard to get volunteers to come in who can make those types of time commitments to come in. Now, this is a national problem, a state problem, and certainly a local problem. All volunteer fire departments are struggling with personnel. All right. So there's been a 33% decline in responders over the past 20 years and a 30-some% chance increase in that. So as the call volume goes up, the amount of available responders going down, and that's what's creating this, this problem that we have. Like I said, 80% of our call volume is EMS. That's between all fire departments. One of the reasons why that is we do have an aging population here in Manistee. As we become more of a retirement-based and style community, it does affect our call volume in that. So then we also talk about the fragmented volunteer response model, and our fire departments are just being stretched thin. So why do we need a fire district? So like I said, we talked about the call volume, the increasing. So the median age in Manistee is 50. All right, so that's up in median age in the rest of Michigan is 40. All right, so that's one of the things, the factors that are leading to our increased EMS call volume. Our local and fire departments, these gaps pose like a serious risk. All right, when we need available responders, there's less and less available in that. So the district, what we hope to do and what we intend to do with this district is we can help the other existing communities staff their fire departments the same that we staff ours, and that we're bringing up their level of service and we're giving them tools that will help them achieve this and that. And what we're going to be able to do with these increased staffing of these other fire departments, when we use each other and we borrow each other, we're borrowing and using the same thing. Currently, right now, with our automatic aid agreement, and that we are sending firefighters to calls right away. They have time delays with their response because they're bringing people in from home to respond to this, and that's creating these time gaps in that. So we're really not borrowing the same thing from each other. We're sending immediate response. They have more of a 15-minute response time in that. So we want to make it more equal across all of our communities, so when we are using each other's services, we're really using the same thing. So the proposed solution is making a Manistee Fire and Emergency Response Agency. And what this is we're creating a district-wide fire department to where we're going to be reducing some of the redundancy that we have. We have just surrounding Manistee Lake, and this is, we have 5 separate fire departments that all operate individually. They all buy their own equipment. They all buy their own fire apparatus, staff, and that. We have a lot of equipment that's surrounding us. What we don't have is people to operate this equipment. So the big thing is what we're doing is we're showing people that we're going to reduce the redundant equipment we have, multiple fire trucks, those types of things, and we're going to take those savings and reinvest that in personnel so we can handle the needs of our community with that. As an example of that is our fire department, we have a ladder truck, all right? 3 miles down the road in Manistee Township, they have a ladder truck. Each of our ladder trucks are about 30 years old and that need to be replaced. For us to replace those ladder trucks, they cost about $2 million. So potentially we'd be looking at $4 million worth of ladder truck replacement soon. You know, under this district, we would be consolidating equipment and only purchasing one and then reinvesting that money into personnel and that. So that's what we hope to solve. So what we're proposing with this is it's a $3.8 million budget. All right, 75% of that budget goes to personnel, 12% goes to operations, 4% training and supplies, and 7% into capital purchases. And this strategic cost sharing would lower the budget on individual agencies. So I used the fire truck example because, you know, that's the biggest, most expensive thing that we own, but there's also, I think we can show savings all the way across the board that we can show on this. Another thing is, we currently purchased incident reporting software we use to track data in that. It costs us about $3,000 for that out of our budget. If we had a district where everybody was contributing, we could share that software and we would all benefit from it. We also have different things like the joint purchasing of turnout gear, equipment, those types of things, and we have better purchasing power. So how we would finance this district, this $3.8 million district, would be through a funding formula that was in part of this handout, just to show you what we're doing. And in this funding formula, the city's contribution of this 3.8 would be $1.2 million. And that's a current reduction of about $200,000. So what we're doing is you're seeing the savings of reducing some of the redundant equipment. But the pitch and what I'm explaining to the other communities is while our budget decreases, their budgets are doubling and tripling in size. And so it's really kind of a different story based on the community that we're doing, that I'm speaking to with this. But what I'm explaining to them is they need to bring up that level of service, and that because we're all depending on each other, and that's how we share the cost. So while we do see a reduction in our overall general fund and our general budget, there are other townships that we're showing them they need to really double and triple their budgets so we can provide a safe and efficient type of fire service for the community. It's more community-based. This funding formula is based on 3 different things. We use this formula, we put it in a combination of SEV, population, and call volume. And then that's how we come up. Currently, right here, the city of Manistee would be contributing about 45% to that budget. That would be that $1.2 million, the reduction of $200,000. And then the other communities would be adjusted based on their current call volume, population, and the amount of property that we're protecting in their area. So really, consolidation. So I talked a lot about, we have a lot of firefighting equipment here in the Manistee area. The things that we're going to be reducing is these are the costs of the current fire apparatus. Since COVID the cost of fire apparatus has increased by about 40%. And that huge jumps in apparatus. Currently right now, our fire engine is over 20 years old and our ladder truck is currently at 28 years old. Typically, you replace a fire truck in 20 to 25 years in that. So what we're doing is we're using other people's equipment, we're combining it, and then reducing the amount of overall equipment we're purchasing. So while we do have the $200,000 reduction of our general fund, there's also going to be additional capital savings that you're going to see with this proposed district. Currently, fire engines cost anywhere from $500,000 to $800,000. Like I said, aerial platforms, $1.3 to $1.8 million. And then there's tanker trucks, wildland, and ambulances, $350,000. Redistributing this and just becoming more efficient operation of this. So how this specifically benefits the city of Manistee is, well, for our residents and taxpayers, we're going to be reducing the general fund contribution, about $200,000 going down. We're going to be sharing capital equipment purchases in that. As an example, the ladder truck in that, instead of having 2 ladder trucks 3 miles away from each other, we would propose to only have 1 ladder truck. We also each have a fire engine at $1 million a piece replacement. We'd be going, instead of 2, we would be going down to 1 engine. We would each have a fire apparatus at our station. We just both wouldn't have 2. And so there's a $3 million savings in just capital by just partnering with Manistee Township. We're looking at faster EMS response by trained personnel. Currently, right now, our ambulance is we have about 1,100 to 1,200 calls per year. So we run about 3 to 4 calls each day out of our city fire department. 80% of those calls are medical calls. Medical calls take us a round trip from the time we go there to the time we get to the hospital and back to their station. It's a 53-minute turnaround time. So if we're doing 3 to 4 calls per day, that's about 3 to 4 hours per day, we're tied up, out, and busy responding to calls. By creating this redundant system to where our partnering townships have the same staffing that we do, when we need them, they'll be providing the same level of services when we need them. That's what we're trying to do and get with this. Reduction of capital expenses, hit on that quite a bit. So smoother fire department operations. So this is one of the things is when there is a fire and we all come on scene, we basically run it, I call it a lot like a football game, a football team. We call the play in that. Well, if we're the same organization, practicing, training, and communicating together, you have a much more efficient system operationally. And that's a really big bang for our buck, is that currently by operating independent organizations, and that it creates communication gaps. It's not an efficient way to run it. And that, so we're going to be looking at proving that. Consistent service across the city and townships. Currently, right now in the city, when we call, we get on our truck in under a minute, and then we respond to the emergency. The way the other fire departments are staffed, it takes them between 6 to 15 minutes before they get their apparatus out of the door. So we're really not borrowing the same type of service from each other. By creating this district and having them staff the same, we'll be borrowing and using the same thing, the same level of service from each other. And cost savings would be these capital savings. We could reinvest that into the different training and equipment, just keep an all-around more efficient, better agency. And that, where we are currently right now with this process, we're having monthly meetings with city staff. Mr. Gamble and I meet with the township supervisors and their fire chiefs. We're going through and talking about what this would look like, the district, and we're bringing it closer and closer together. We handed them out a draft resolution for township support that they are going to be taking back and putting up to their boards. With that resolution of support, we're asking for $5,000, and that where we're going to be creating a pool where we can start investing real resources, lawyers, articles of incorporation, those types of things, like marketing, a website to communicate these things. So we're going to start getting some buy-in from the townships with those who pass this resolution. And I'm currently working with our finance and refining a budget creation, capital improvements, station modifications that the other municipalities would have to come up with. And we're moving down this road of planning and moving this thing forward. And with that, that's it. Open for questions.
Having previously worked in public safety, in similar circumstances as yours, where the sense that one larger community fire district would better serve folks. One of the things we always examined was the ISO ratings, and I'm assuming you guys have looked at that as a pitch to both the township boards and of course the city council, because that will definitely change. But we discovered when we did ours out in Idaho was that ours lowered a little bit, but everybody out in the county got such a big boost that it was really a boom financially to everyone to have a lower insurance rates for their service.
Yeah, we certainly looked at the ISO ratings and how that would help. And that will be one of the things that we'll use some of this support to help communicate to people that it really, the level of your fire protection does have an effect on your property taxes and that. And I think there's many of those benefits too.
Tom, I've got a question for you.
Yep.
If you guys address these surrounding communities, mutual aid agreements with like my department with Filer, Spruce Hill with Shrine, Necmo, Manistee Township, is that being addressed?
In that, so currently right now with this fire district, the players that are actively coming to the table and that we're talking to right now is we're talking with Onekama, Manistee Township, Filer, and Stronach Township. So those are the ones that have been coming to our meetings and we're discussing this. We're doing like a balancing act. Certainly we think, you know, the more contributions we can get and diversify things and keep this, there is benefits to that. But what we did is we looked at the core population, the core call volume, and that, and really who needs it the most because they use it the most, and getting those players. It's kind of almost, we want to be careful not to have like too many cooks in the kitchen, if you will, and once we get something established and we show, they show the services we provide, and this is certainly open to more talks and more things with other surrounding communities.
Right now, I know how the surrounding county departments coming in have their agreements, and they've been working great. We know, you know, and we understand it's slow, but
Yep.
we're gonna have the combining fire or Stronach with you guys and stuff. How's that gonna affect the mutual aids with Mason County or Lake County that are currently affected?
Yeah, my experience shows me is, you know, you're always gonna need mutual aid agreements, right? You don't know what's going to happen in your community and how much resources you need. You look at, I think it was this past summer when Los Angeles burned, and that here's probably the second biggest fire department in the nation that got completely overwhelmed with this emergency. So, you know, something like that could happen with us, so we're always going to need mutual aid agreements with the greater area, with a very large network, because those things do happen in that. So definitely always open to mutual aid, and it's necessary.
You can't survive with you guys if you
Right.
get overwhelmed real quick.
And
Would the other townships be taking on like a millage to help pay for this, or how would, you know, we're paying the millage, would they take on an additional millage for fire?
yeah, so right now, the way that we're setting this up with the funding formula, and you will see there is a millage rate in that. That is an example to show, like currently right now, our city, we pay for it out of our general fund. That millage rate in there is just an example for people to chew on and to understand what it would cost. But really, it's up to the individual agency or government agency to pay the bill. So if they choose to pass a millage and pay for their portion that way, you know, that's up to them. We're keeping that flexibility of they can decide how they're going to pay for it.
I think you mentioned at a city council meeting that all of the Manistee firefighters are paramedics. Is that the case at all the townships? Are they trained to a paramedic standard, or do they have to get up to speed?
Yeah, so training in the fire service is this, no, they're not. So paramedic, in the fire service and in the ambulance world, so a paramedic is really the gold standard. That's what you want. That's how we provide the advanced life support and use all the tools, really, that we have. The township department, the volunteer, no. Currently, right now, they're mostly the MFR level, which that would be the lowest portion of the service that they provide. What we're doing with this, though, is we want paramedics, we want advanced life support ambulances throughout all. So we would be creating an organization where the people we hire to staff this would be paramedics. They would be trained to paramedics and stuff. It wouldn't happen instantly.
So currently you have 9 full-time employees. What would the future look like? How many full-time employees? And I'm sure that you would probably still want to have the volunteer aspect of firefighting.
Absolutely.
So what would that balance look like?
So our volunteers are great, you know, and we certainly always cherish the volunteer firefighter in that they come in, and we have some very dedicated, hardworking core people that come in. In any system that we have, I think we do want to encourage a volunteer system and recruit and retain these personnel, because it is really an affordable way to get additional resources secondary in that, not necessarily primary would be the thing in that. And so it would be considered a combination style department in that we would always have volunteers where we would want them to come in. What was the first part? You had a
How
question?
many full-time employees would this look like under the fire district?
Yep, so this $3.8 million budget, what I'm doing is, what I'm pitching is a 28-person fire department, and we would have 8 full-time firefighters on per day. Then a chief and some additional administrative things would cut out this. But it would be 3 shifts of 8 firefighters on per day. The stations that we're looking at staffing is, of course, our fire station would be staffed, and that we would staff Manistee Township, Filer Township, and Onekama Township.
But they would be employees of the township, right? We would still, how many would Manistee still have?
They would be employees of the district.
Okay.
Really, so really what we're doing is we're creating a district, okay, that encompasses that geographic area, and all 28 employees would be employees of the district. And that,
So like their pension and their benefits then would come out of each township then? Or what would be the legacy cost?
in that, so what that is like currently right now, our full-time firefighters in that, they would become part of the district, all right? And then that would be part of, that part would stay the same. It's the same, they would just be working for the district and not necessarily just the city. Does that make sense?
So we would have I'm looking at like pension, long-term liability would just maintain the 9 that we have basically.
And that, well, the district, there'd be employees of the district,
Right.
and the district would maintain the legacy and the pension and all that.
I
To
can
them.
give you a good example of that now. Mason County Rural Fire Authority runs 7 fire departments, covering all but City of Ludington, Pierre Marquette, and Hamlin. All the firefighters there are employees of the Mason County Rural Fire Authority. All their insurance and everything through that, the townships and villages and cities put into that operating budget. And that authority handles all the other stuff for those members, so I'm seeing this about the same thing I'm looking at, where it's one pot that all the money's coming into a organization that's run as the employer of the firefighters. They're still responsible to the government agencies, but their firefighters are members of, employees of the fire district, which can be a standalone entity.
So when we showed the budget and then the breakdown, 75% going to personnel costs, the pension and those legacy costs was included in that 75%.
It's like instead of having 9 full-time Manistee, we now have 28 through like a third-party people, and now we get the advantage of having all 28, even though this one may be 13% on site, and this one is 100% on site.
So the change in governance would be a district-wide governing board. The
Yes.
appointments from, I suspect you have most of that worked out, it's usually
And-
pretty cut and dry systems for appointments from the various government agencies that then do their oversight control.
So, yeah, so we're creating an articles of incorporation.
Component, yes.
Yeah, and then, so we're really creating an agency, its own agency with the borders and geographic area. Each municipality or agency would have board members. It would be ran by a board who the fire chief answers to.
So this requires a vote of the people or the elected bodies determine? So like the Manistee City Council, the Manistee Township Supervisors determine it, or do we as voters vote on this?
So is for forming the district and joining the district, that would be the councils and the boards, the township boards to join the district. How they choose to fund it, likely some of these townships will need millages, and then that's where it goes to the voters of, do you want to fund this? But actually just joining the district, that would be a council or a board decision to join this.
If it helps,
To fund their contribution, that would be where I believe the other townships would decide where it would go to a vote.
It helps you to think of it this way. You already have a centralized 911 system, and that is essentially the basic model that you're talking about in centralizing the fire service.
That's a really good example. Instead of each of us having our own 911 center, we're creating a bigger district.
Tom, who would be the overall leader of this fire district? Would you have
That would,
township?
so the board would hire a fire chief, and the fire chief would oversee the operations and administration of that.
Okay.
So that'd be a board decision.
So with this, so I'm gonna ask my question. You know, I appreciate, you've obviously put a lot of work into this. Have you kind of done this presentation to the county? Because it does represent, you know, half the county, more than half the county. This
Yeah.
might be helpful as a good neighbor.
Yeah, so I've been working so Chief Rob Johnson at the Oneka Fire Department, we've been working together on this very hard. We really kind of have this partnership. Rob, Chief Johnson, and I have talked with the Onekama Township Board, the Manistee Township Board, Stronach, and Fiber Township. And we've done this, basically a modified version of this presentation together.
So would you would include East Lake in this as a
East Lake's
member?
pretty much part of Manistee Township.
Yeah.
They
So
pretty much merged together.
yeah, East Lake, right, we haven't reached necessarily out to that specific fire department, but right now, the way they're staffed in that, we certainly would be doing the mutual aid with them, but there is that, I could see an avenue where we would have East Lake as part of the district too. We would definitely be open to communicating with them, but we haven't talked to them directly yet.
And I guess what I'm referring to is the county commissioners as a group. You know, because you
Oh.
kind of hit them all.
Sure.
You know, to have their support would be a plus.
Yeah, so I meet the first Monday, or first Friday of every month. We do have a county public safety meeting, and I've been beating this drum there frequently in that. So we have got good feedback from the county commissioners that attend that meeting.
Thank you, Chief.
John and Maddie?
Yes, thanks, Chief.
And anybody's welcome to email me if you have questions, and I have a lot more stuff. If you have any more, just come reach out to me direct, email me, we'll set up an appointment, and I'll be happy to explain anything.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Oh, wow, everything over here. Okay, I've not met many people here. My name is Maddie Kazmierski. I started with the city about 6 weeks ago, so you may have to bear with me a bit on what I'll be sharing. Started as a planning and zoning administrator. I'm gonna walk through some of the things we hope to see in the upcoming calendar year as big topics of discussion, as well as the master plan update, which ideally is gonna be before 2026. Jerry Blue couldn't make it today, but we worked on this together, and so let's go forward. Oh, also, I sort of split, everything's in the same presentation. Don't want to take up too much time. I've got like 2 or 3 slides for each thing, and then hopefully pause for discussion within, so you don't forget by the time we get to the end. All right, we'll start with the master plan update. So back in February 2024, the city received a $33,000 grant, Housing Readiness Incentive Grant from MISTA, which we intended to use to support the update of the 2016 master plan. Then in March, the city issued an RFP seeking professional planning services to assist, and in June 2024, we signed a contract with William & Works. Last month, November, the Planning Commission did make the motion to send this master plan draft to City Council for review ahead of what's going to be a public review period. Moving forward next week, it should be, based on how this goes, on the agenda to present the master plan to City Council and continue to gather feedback. Little bit of an overview of the new plan, the big focus and really why we intended on updating this master plan was to place housing at the forefront, to align with new RRC best practices. You know, that is something that they really look for, is a variety of housing options. And focusing on two main housing goals. So welcoming, again, a variety of housing types and inviting accessible and well-maintained neighborhoods, and then ensuring residents will have access to safe, affordable, and thoughtfully scaled housing across all income levels and housing types by adopting flexible zoning policies that accommodate growth while preserving neighborhood character. Some other goals included preserving historic charm of the city, some of that small town aspect, protecting natural spaces, and then attracting new talent, attracting new business, things like that. All right, so far we have started gaining feedback. So this has gone out to staff directors, myself, city council received a copy, the planning commission received a copy. Big things so far have been typos, grammar mistakes, things like that. And so as far as I know, William & Works will do sort of a final edit to make those, you know, sort of small changes. I have a copy that I've been making any edits that get sent my way in terms of spelling. There are some historical inaccuracies, so small things that, you know, because we did contract this out to a firm not local to the area, they probably don't know some of these niche details that everyone in this room probably has a better sense of. And then any recent changes. So the update spanned a bit over a year now, so anything that's happened within the last calendar year might not necessarily be up to date. And this was the base of most of the feedback we've received so far. In your own review, council, anyone else, we plan on taking additional feedback. I've got a big sheet of all the comments made, and I've got it split up. I reached out to our contact at William & Works today to hopefully get a better sense of how she plans on moving forward with those edits. If anyone has any comments or questions, I know council will be reviewing this again next week, hopefully, but this is what I got.
Any comments on that, or should we move on to the?
All right,
Okay.
sounds good. Moving forward, we have the child care audit. So again, last year, August 2024, the city received zoning amendment recommendations for child care readiness from McKenna. This was a free opportunity. They sent it our way. These changes revolved around waiving development fees, so like special use permits, things like that, and updating language in the ordinance to ideally make childcare more accessible. The audit did point out that some of our requirements don't necessarily align with state law, so the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, we're not necessarily up to date with what that asks of us. The city is working in partnership with the Manistee County Community Foundation. That's something I'm sort of still getting up to speed on, and what resources that they are seeking for this. And moving forward, the city has not made these changes that McKenna recommended yet, but it could be something that we look to do in the near future. General recommendations, again, changing definitions, so I think that the technically appropriate term moving forward is going to be child care. Our ordinance does still refer to it as daycare, and then by updating that, we would better align with the LARA definitions of what child care is, as well as state law and what the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act is asking of us. Waiving development fees, this is something that came up in Planning Commission last year, I believe, as a question of, you know, I have people interested, I want to start this daycare in my home, I can't afford to pay a $1,000 special use permit, and I want to get this started right away. This could be something we discuss of, you know, it would be a big thing to waive an entire $1,000 fee if this is something that we do hope to see coming to the surface frequently. Could we do a time period where this is waived and we promote development and childcare in that set time? I know there were some building fees that have like a discount based on ADA and accommodations in that sense, so could it be something where we just discount the fee? I think that the Planning Commission consensus was it's not really their place to say. So moving forward, how do we want to tackle that? And could that be avoided by aligning with this act saying that in residential zones, daycare should be permitted by right. We have it permitted by right in R3, so high-density residential, but in medium and low-density residential, it is still only by special use permit.
Thank you, Maddie.
Has any questions on daycare?
And this was brought up, Councilmember Raditz, you brought up daycare, and this is one of those, we had the transition from Teresa Waldo to,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to kind of see where it's at and bring it to light in this setting and see if there's any comments, but I think this could be a goal for this next year to implement these. We did have, the Manistee County Community Foundation is working on a county-wide effort, which Maddie's going to be involved with, but I think there's probably going to be a lot of overlap. This McKenna study was something, I went to a managers conference and they let us know that this would be something we could get. So it seems like there's some low-hanging fruit, and there's a council appetite. I know this was discussed at the Planning Commission, but just wanted to open this forum up for any issues the Planning Commission saw with this to maybe discuss with council, or I just kind of open forum on this and next steps.
So if we made childcare by right in all of the districts, then we wouldn't have to worry about the fees. Correct?
Yeah,
It would eliminate that.
in residential, which,
And we could still make determinations on levels of care.
yeah, and I think they still recommend
Have-
you keep those divisions. So this is sort of that 7 to 12 group.
And I think what's happening is that in light of all the regulations and licensing requirements, there's childcare being offered in the home without the protection of zoning or without the protection of having water quality. And we need to take accountability in our region to make it accessible and to help these businesses become reliable and regulated for our littlest citizens who can't speak up for themselves.
You know, the military has used family childcare for probably longer than any other
Yes.
entity. And they also have the best childcare system in the world, by the way, as a model.
Yeah.
The challenge is money. The reason why the military has the best childcare system in the world is because they pay half the cost. And unless there's some kind of economic support system, childcare is still going to be a big issue.
You're bringing up a really good point because we're trying to get our local businesses to engage in opportunities like TriShare, where the state, or United Way is paying a third, the employer is paying a third, and then families are paying a third. But if there isn't reliable, accessible, licensed care, you can't get those premiums that help pay for 2/3 of your child care costs. So I'm going to be a real squeaky wheel about this with no apologies. I'm going to sleep like a baby tonight. And Maddie, I look forward to working with this council. I know that the study is from 2024, and in August of 2025, Laura just reduced, or they consolidated, because we belong in a child care desert in Manistee County. It's highly impactful, and the state recognized that by issuing some, along with Michigan Works and the Manistee Community Foundation. So while I love this study, I'm wondering I would have when we're getting together to work on this is, does it need to be updated for the new requirements? Yeah, I'm super excited with the show. I don't want to take up everyone's time. Thank you.
Well, with that, I would invite you to our meetings.
Are you sure?
Yes, I will.
I think you need a minute to consider
No.
that.
I can hammer you down. So.
Okay.
But we always need those views. We need input.
Yeah.
If there's nobody here, nobody comes to our meetings, there's no input.
Okay.
So we make the judgments. And are they right or wrong? Well, time will tell.
Okay.
But we need input.
I
For everyone here, so.
thank you.
Anything else? All right. This is a great example of someone who comes to those meetings. So looking at pre-approved plans for tiny lots, sort of moving into a more general sense, in my 6 weeks, I would say the biggest thing that has come to my attention is I often tell people, can't do that, your lot's too small. So, looking at the issue of how we want to tackle the non-conforming lots across the city. You should have a picture, it's gonna be up on the screen in the next slide to sort of help create a visual, but George Butler is from Tiny Home Developers. He has come to the Planning Commission multiple times over the last 2 years, I think. He came and met with Jerry and myself last week, actually, to bring some more language ideas and more of his ideas to the table. He's really, really pushing this, which I think is great. Ideally, he is looking to develop these non-conforming lots in the R2 residential district. His goal is to bring more workforce housing to the city, looking at more attainable AMIs, 80 to 120%. The Planning Commission has it's median income, so more of that average income level, not too high. Planning Commission has expressed a lot of interest. I know that Katie from the county is really interested in this as well. Jerry and myself have had multiple conversations with George. His sort of proposal is this tiny housing marketing. I think that this is something to consider and to discuss. I would propose maybe more of an economy efficient dwelling, or I wrote down the master plan sort of refers to them as economy efficient units. So this is a topic in the new draft master plan of sort of these smaller homes. Jerry and I also discussed maybe this could be an overlay zone in the R2 district so that this doesn't necessarily have to change multiple aspects of language, and this could be more of a blurb in that ordinance. We're gonna look at the picture here. So on the left, all of those red dots are going to be parcels less than 6,000 square feet. So if you have a home on that, can't tear it down and rebuild it. If it's vacant, can't build on it. You're gonna need a zoning variance. This leads to a lot of older homes in the city that, can't be rebuilt in the future. A lot of vacant parcels, we don't necessarily have a map showing which are vacant, which are owned by the neighboring property, etc. But most of these do fall in that R2 zone. So that bright yellow is going to be where most of these are, hence sort of the overlay idea, not really digging into the commercial aspect at all. So sort of on the barrier of that 31 overlay. Some of the language we have looked at, again, just a very rough idea. This can be open to a lot in terms of lot square footage minimums, housing minimums, whether we want to pull duplexes into this. I think sort of the idea is maintaining the existing front and rear setbacks. It's going to be the side setbacks that we reduce down to 5 feet. I believe this would still comply with fire requirements. I can't speak directly to that, but initially looking at maybe a lot half the size. So we're going to be reducing the side setbacks, keep the front and the rear, and then also reducing the width on the front. So it's currently 60 feet, looking at maybe the potential of a 30-foot wide lot. George did bring some sample pre-approved plan ideas. So if we had a set of drawings for different types of houses, I think he had maybe 2 single units, 2 duplexes. He offered the idea of, a garage with a unit above it, something like that. Open to discussion of whether we think that would, be beneficial, if that would be concerning in terms of sort of that cookie cutter design, if that's something we wanted to avoid. Jerry and I also talked about sort of setting up a specific site plan review tactic for these properties, how we wanted to move forward with that. But I think that the general consensus on our end is that this is a really big issue, and I see it, you know, almost every day as someone wants to do something to their property, but they can't because it's too small. And so I think to battle that housing crisis, this is a really great way to start.
And there was some interest from council about pre-approved plans. How we select those, I think that's still to be determined, but just wanted to bring that up to this group for discussion.
How did we derive that the 240 square foot is the minimum?
This was just some sample language. I think that's open to.
That's pretty small.
Yeah.
Some of your bedrooms are that size.
And we kind of figured that would be but figures start small, and then we'll argue on our way up to what's best.
Impacts on water, wastewater, what capacity we might already have, if these are seriously being considered, each house will contribute its share, and I'm not sure where we are on all that, because we just had a collapse of a line, and those kind of things are always in the back of people's heads.
I don't think we have a capacity issue for wastewater, and
We don't have any capacity issues. And the collapse line was just a broken lateral from the contractor.
Right.
We treat about 1 million gallons a day, and the plant is capable of treating up to 2 million. So then we have,
That's not an issue at all.
that's not an issue. Perfect.
I was sort of wondering the same, thinking non-conforming lot had to do with parcels of property that weren't currently had any sort of resident on them. I take it from your map, most of these properties have residents on them, maybe all do. It's just a matter of what can you do with them based on current zoning requirements and altering that to maybe make these things more affordable to convert.
Yeah, so if a home exists on a lot smaller than 6,000 square feet right now, you can't expand it, you can't tear it down and rebuild it. There's going to be a lot of regulation on how you're able to upgrade that home.
Necessary concern.
Yeah, moving forward, they're only going to get older.
Yeah, I'm connecting to your comment because right now, without those improvements, the taxable value is stagnant. Without being able to resell that, the taxable value is stagnant.
It's just degenerate.
Yeah, so so your options are to tear your house down and have a blank, you know, still not be able to do the things that would sell a home, like a garage or, you know, so we're shooting ourselves in our foot by not starting this. There may not be all the answers about, you know, small house, economical tiny houses, but it allows this dialogue getting started, allows us to bring things forward to the public and to people that have expertise. So.
And I think that's sort of my concern in the word tiny is how public reaction might look at that. So sort of how we want to phrase that moving forward.
To that point, there's probably 2 to 3 houses a year that get torn down from being blighted structures or from fire damage. And a lot of those happen on those lots that can't be rebuilt on.
Well, they really are tiny homes already, you know, they're with the lumber barons built for the workers.
They all have water and sewage or
Yeah.
running to it.
Yeah.
I was thinking this would get
Oh, I got him.
unused property at all. Right. Oh.
Yeah.
It's probably
Utilities are
they're
there.
not at the 200, they're more around 600 square feet.
Yeah, well,
The small ones.
250, we all know might be way too tiny, small.
Bob?
I see a lot in my line of work. I work all over the state with parcels, and we're not alone on this. A lot of places, the subdivisions were platted way back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I can give you an example. In Hamlin Township, the lots are 100 feet by 40 feet. So you can't, and they had, back then, everybody could build on that. Well, nowadays they can't. But some of these other places, now they're going to these non-conforming lots, like they were talking about the setbacks and everything else. What they're coming up with is they're coming up with building envelopes for those lots. So, okay, as long as you stay within these boundaries of the building envelope, you're good. And I can't remember which city I was in working, they were pushing that quite a bit. And they were starting to get more developers, smaller houses, but they were getting rid of the vacant lands that were unbuildable as they were. But going ahead and put those, it'll help.
I'm connecting with what you're saying because some of the earlier ordinances were to prevent trailers from going into those long, it was kind of a not in my backyard. We want bougie houses, right? And we want to make sure that affordable and accessible houses can't be in this or, you know, the cookie cutter houses. So
That's along the same lines when the state changed the regulations on property
Yeah.
divisions, because people would have a half-mile deep parcel,
Mhm.
but they needed so many acres for built, and you had 100-foot wide lots by a half-mile deep.
Yeah.
And
We're in a different
Yeah.
time, and we have different needs in our community. And so I'm very grateful that you're bringing this thinking forward, and I'm eager to see where it goes.
Me too. Anything else? Mark, you good? Okay. All right, we have planning and zoning and engineering escrows. So this is sort of a newer idea within the last few weeks, sort of just the concept that a lot of these permit requests that we're taking on end up costing more than what we charge for the initial fee. And then, you know, who is that excess charge gonna fall back on, and how do we wanna handle that? We did get some proposed language from the city attorney to charge an escrow or sort of an initial deposit when we do larger scale projects that we think are gonna end up costing more in staffing fees or legal fees. Looking for the policy to comply with some best practices, so specifying what these costs are going to be that, you know, we're charging this deposit for, setting initial amounts and replenishment rules, still sort of a newer idea, so just a lot of ranges in that section. This would ensure financial transparency and accountability. So how are we going to maintain these funds? Who would be keeping track of them? Things like that. Establishing procedures for any excess funds or deficiencies. How would we be, you know, we would be returning anything that we don't use from that initial deposit to whoever brought this forward. And then any consequences or an appeal process for anyone who does not comply with sort of this idea. Again, very new. I think Bill has something to say, but.
Yeah, I'll just mention, yeah, I think with that conditional rezoning, there were a lot of modifications that kind of prompted the planning and zoning portion of it. The engineering escrows that came from some discussions with Spicer Group and Mr. McCula. We've had some situations where developers don't provide us with the as-built, and that's problematic. We need to put that in our GIS. It's just good practice. So we need to be retaining something so that we make sure we get those things. So just for this group, when we're dealing with developers, I think just being aware that that's happening. I think we plan to take this to the ordinance committee next, but yeah, I don't know, Lucas, if you want to mention anything, or Jeff or Sean.
Yeah, so I guess the most important thing with that too is the city has their infrastructure projects where the engineer of record is on site and making sure the city's getting the infrastructure that they specify and up to their standard. And without having someone from DPW or engineering on site to make sure that happens, there's the risk that, you know, some of that infrastructure is not installed the right way. And there's as-built, like Bill had mentioned, that the city doesn't retain. And then after the development is completed, then the city's left maintaining that infrastructure with limited records, and it makes it very challenging to maintain it and repair it. So that's kind of the premise of that policy.
Just to simplify it, we set the standard, they build it, and we own it afterwards. And we just want to simplify that process to make sure if we own it, that it definitely is going to meet our standards, and it shouldn't cost the developer any more money. It protects us more.
I would say this is probably a long time in coming, because I know I've had to use escrow accounts like this in the past. So it's definitely a positive. So like for a bigger project, would it, the amount escrow be higher than the, not less than 1,000? I mean, would it be based on the size of the project?
So for an engineering project, like the apartment complex in Manistee Township that's going on, we've gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Our engineers have spent a lot of time trying to getting them to comply. We had concerns that when they started construction, they were not going to provide the inspection we needed. Some of the engineering firms are from out of state, so they don't necessarily are designing or complying with what the EGLE requirements and our requirements are. So when a project like that gets proposed, we would provide the developer a proposal of what those fees and costs would be and require them to pay it up front, and then we would draw upon that account.
My question is it for something like that, would it be a $20,000 escrow versus like a potential $1,000? Because you could use that much money on a bigger project.
Yeah, and I think it would be on a project by project basis.
Okay, that's my, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we would set a set fee.
Okay, good.
Would that be reflected in an RFP so that a contractor would have an understanding that that's our way of doing things?
We just started talking about it in the past month. Spicer has several other communities that follow this practice, so they provided us with some copies of that, and we're just starting to review and discuss the details of it.
Do you think that would be inviting for contractors or off-putting? I'm just asking.
Would be more to the developers. What's your experience been?
Yeah, it's the developers, and I think as long as everybody's on the same playing field, we haven't had as much pushback on it. It is very common.
Okay.
This isn't anything, you'll find a lot of communities doing this. And it's scalable, like you were mentioning. We typically, whether it's us or a different engineering firm, they would typically give a proposal to the city. So this is a large project, we gotta review the plans, it's X. We gotta inspect the site, we anticipating 20 days of inspection, it's X amount of dollars. Propose that to the developer and put it in escrow. Instead of trying to chase it down later, there's different types of escrows. There's escrows to review and inspect. There's escrows for just basically performance.
Okay.
It doesn't involve the engineer, where you just set the money aside to make sure they're doing it right. So you got a little bit of leverage on them.
Yeah.
So there's escrow about protecting your facilities. Maybe you're not putting in new infrastructure for the city, but you're working next to city infrastructure. There's ways you can escrow and protect. So there's a lot of options, but the big one is, getting inspection and review of plans. Smaller ones, we do tend to see a standardized price, so they know what they're getting into. But when you get into, we need to put in 1.5 miles, 2 miles of water main loop, or those are, we just scale up.
Well, I hope contractors will recognize that and understand that there's an accountability piece before they take the time to start the process.
Well, it'd be the developer more than the contractor.
I keep saying contractor instead of developer, and
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
Contractors are responsible to the developer.
To Jeff's point, that they really are required to do that. And so it's not theoretically an additional cost, it's just we have a lot more control.
It's a leverage.
It's leverage.
They can't get away at the end of it going, well, I'm gone, see you later. Well, then we're keeping your money.
So I'll give you a real world example. That apartment complex it's a very experienced developer. They've got a very experienced engineer, but they're not experienced in Manistee. So it would probably be more expensive for them to go through the design and go through our reviews until they got it to where we wanted it, than if our engineers designed it, because it's streamlined, they know our standards, they've helped us create those standards. And in the end, we just need to make sure that when we own that pipeline for the next 100 years, it's not going to cost the citizens anything more than it should. And there's a lot of activity right now, a tremendous amount of activity.
Yes.
So that's what kind of prompted these discussions, and and I think that's separate from the planning and zoning, but but they are very interrelated because of the activity that we're seeing.
Well, I love it. I think this is long overdue, and thank you for pursuing that.
Jeff, how did we work with the hotel on that? Did we escrow any funds with the hotel?
We did not. We did have a development agreement because they did build some city infrastructure as part of the overall project. But the city has some infrastructure that we designed as part of, that in conjunction with it. They happened to hire the same engineer, which helped us coordinate that. And in the end, we had to kind of tally all those funds up on who paid for what and who. So it was a little bit complex, but we got through it.
Thank you.
All right, my last thing, we have the 12th Street and Tamarack Housing RFP. This is another one where, I guess not another one, because this one's not new. It's been around for a while, but I think it's been a lot of chat and discussion, but not a lot that's really being actively done or written down. So not a ton that I could pull entirely, just besides the fact that there is a lot of interest in this property. So it's a city-owned property. It's within Filer Township, corner of 12th and Tamarack. Sort of an ideal spot for a potential housing development. I know that there have been developers interested in, purchasing this property and pursuing that. The February 2025 Planning Commission meeting, they discussed sort of some opportunities for annexing the property, what that might look like. Not a super long discussion, but if Mark agrees, I think the general consensus was that they did support the sale of this property moving forward. This has come to the surface again recently. Conversations with city officials, I think, have shown some concern with what utilities might be like on the property. Definitely needs to be a longer discussion, but I think moving forward, this could be a potential RFP to, again, combat that housing issue and use this vacant piece of land that the city isn't actively doing anything with.
So a couple comments on that. We've talked about this quite a bit, but the Housing Commission was interested in the property as part of the RAD conversion, so we were looking at that. Talking with Andrew, and we've had some interest, so I think we're looking at, they could submit a proposal, but I think we want to move forward with a RFP document to kind of just get that out there, see what could be proposed there. And it's R2 basically for Filer, so there's a potential for having multiple units there. It's in it's one of our pump stations so it's in the wellhead protection area, so there are some considerations. It's kind of a odd shaped lot, and we want to make sure that it connects well to the utilities in a cost-effective manner. So that's what we're looking at now, and maybe having some sort of, working with our engineers to come up with a exhibit to include in the RFP. So, thank you. Yep, that was kind of, any quick comments on that one? Just want to let people know where that's at.
Anybody have anything else they want to know? We are adjourned.
Thank you.